Hi, friends, good morning. So, today's conversation is on the revised article or the new 12B article in the UN Model Convention on how to tax income from automated digital services. This is something which India has been at the forefront globally, where we have said that income which emanates to e-com companies out of Indian base needs to be taxed in India, or India should have a claim over it. And what is the percentage of attribution? There was a lot of debates and discussions, and we also had the circular early this year, and which gave a what should I say, the thought process of the government behind it. But what this 12B has done, it has completely ratified what our line of thinking. So it's a welcome step, especially for a country like India, which has been leading the thought leadership in this space. So moving on, I would thank Gracelyn, Sundar, and Jugal for their efforts to get the presentation. These are some of the terms used. We shall look at it as and when we get through the presentation. It's a fairly comprehensive one. We would be looking at what is income from automated digital services, what is a rights to tax source and destination, non-applicability when it doesn't apply, what happens in the event of related party transactions, the regime in India, comparing it with global peers, and the way forward. If we were to look at the digital taxation model, as we've said, the Google tax, what is being called, or the equalization levy in India. All these are unilateral levies, and we haven't so far had too much of a blessing in terms of treaty prescription. So OECD has been working on this for quite some time. There have been multiple discussion papers, but a concrete step in this direction, apart from the BEPS project, has not made much headway with clarity. So this 12B article is one of the most important milestones in this regard. So if we were to look at the task force on digital economy, um, which was again initiated by OECD and G20, there have been multiple policy notes, as we discussed, over the last 2 years, and we've had in Jan 2020 an outline which was set up for the architecture of a unified approach on pillar one. Now, what is the fundamental issue? Let's take an example to understand. You have a company X which is based out of country A, and it provides digital content services. Let's take the case of Facebook, which is based out of US, and it works with individual or small businesses in India. And this entity makes the Indian small business owner makes a payment to Facebook. You forget what's happening now, the equalization at this point, but Facebook does not have a PE. Facebook says the business income, so I won't pay tax on this transaction. So how does it work? Should only US enjoy the tax, or India, the place where the market access is being provided, not have any right to tax? So what is it? Now, this was a dilemma which was facing tax officials globally. And India came up with a scenario where they said, okay, fine, if it's not going to be a tax, we will focus on equalization levy, and we started to levy equalization levy on those transactions. But the challenge with the equalization levy, one, it's not a creditable transaction. So it's an expense, though it's in the form of a tax. And in most cases, it's being pushed on to the service recipient. To avoid and to bring clarity and also give a legal sanction under the DTA framework. Because you would see that many of already in I'm sorry. So already in many of the multilateral forums, including the WTO, the India's position on unilateral levy is being challenged. So, which is why a ratification through the DTA framework is a lot more relevant at this point in time. So now, which is why we have Article 12B, income from automated digital services. So let's look at what this article defines as income as. Income from automated digital services means, again, so it's an exhaustive definition, any payment in consideration for any service on the internet or an electronic network requiring minimal human involvement for the service provider. And the term income from automated digital services does not, however, include payments qualifying as fees for technical services under Article 12, because any which ways there you have a flat rate of taxation. So, what is effectively required is payment for any service which is provided through the internet or an electronic medium, and which has very minimal human involvement. That's it, nothing else. So um, we originally had, I still remember, if I'm not wrong, it was a case of Spice Telecom, where FTS requires human intervention. That was a decision at that time. So coming back, so a service regarded as automated when the user is able to make use of the service with minimum human involvement on the side of the supplier of service. Um, the threshold of minimal human intervention would not be crossed where the provisions to new users involves very limited human response to individual user requests. You would today see that bots are being used for addressing queries of consumers. Deep bots where they can take the conversation to 2 3 levels of engagement with the consumer. So the technology is moved way ahead of what we thought it would in such a short span of time. And what it has also done is businesses can be deep tech oriented without necessarily having a physical human presence. Now, what does this include within the definition of automated digital service? It includes online advertising, online intermediation platform like social media, digital content services like Amazon Prime, Spotify, Google Maps, if at all there's a revenue model on that, cloud computing, sale or other alienation of user data, standardized online teaching services where it's like the content is put and the fee is paid for accessing the content. It, however, does not require the live presence of an instructor or a significant customization. And what are the exclusions here? Customized services by professionals, customized online teaching services, services providing access to the internet or to an electronic network, because these can come within the ambit of fees for technical services or independent personal services or dependent personal services, as the case may be. Online sale of goods and services other than automated digital services, this is outside, but India has still found a way to tax this by Finance Act 2020. Broadcasted services, including simultaneous internet transmission, composite digital services embedded within a physical good. So these are the exclusions. So by and large, if you notice, those which would fall within the ambit of other heads are not considered here. But yes, sale of goods, as far as India is concerned, is still within this ambit. Let's see how that dichotomy is getting addressed. What's the general rule of right to taxation? So in any international transaction, you have the country of source, you have the country of residence. Now, who has a primary right? Income from automated digital services, ADS as they call it, arising from a contracting state, let's say India, and paid to a resident of the other contracting state, let us say US, may be taxed in US. Okay, maybe it's taxed in that other state. Does not say India does not have a right. It only says US may have a right to tax. So there is a split between the right between both the jurisdictions, country of source as well as country of residence. Now let's look at the right of the source country to tax. Look at Article 12b2. However, income from automated digital services arising in a contracting state may also be taxed in the contracting state in which it arises and according to the laws of that state. But if the beneficial owner of the income, so it can be taxed in India in accordance with the laws of India. But if the beneficial owner of the income is a resident of the other contracting state, look at the language. If the beneficial owner is an income is a person resident in, let's say, US, the tax charged shall not exceed X percentage, which shall be bilateral negotiation. Of course, US has its own treaty structure, which does not follow UN or OECD. But still, I'm just giving, if we were to take that example and adopt this clause in that treaty, this is how it would look like. So, just as how we've got fees for technical services, or how we have got royalty, we will now have automated digital services, and there would be a threshold beyond which it cannot be taxed. If you take India Singapore Treaty, fees for technical services 10% threshold. Something similar to that will happen for automated digital services. So if the beneficial owner of the income is a resident of the other contracting state, the amount may not exceed a maximum percentage, which will be based on bilateral treaties. So this is something which we will have to see how, in as far as India is concerned, if we were to look at the countries with which we've got maximum transactions on the internet, it would be like a handful. It could be China, it could be US, it could be Singapore, it could be parts of Europe, by and large. So if we were to negotiate and fix that number, I think that should work. And what are the factors to consider while negotiating the withholding rate? One high withholding tax rate imposed in the source country is getting reflected in the cost charged by the non-resident service provider, and the possibility that a tax rate higher than the foreign tax credit limit in the residence country might deter investment. So that's something which a country like India should work. And it should also not result in excessive effective tax rate on the net income derived for services and the relative flow of payments in consideration for automated digital services. So, which is like movement of capital from developing to development, that's might be impacted. So, these are questions which needs to be answered. But what can also happen is you would end up seeing most of these companies then setting up subsidiaries for domestic operations if the market is large, which is the case with a country like India. And the domestic subsidiary would be billing here, paying tax here, and paying a part of it out as royalty to a foreign parent. And royalty, of course, is capped both in terms of percentages as well as in terms of withholding tax rates. So, and who is a beneficial owner? Typically, someone who can use and enjoy the income unconstrained by a contractual or a legal obligation. So it excludes an agent, nominee, or a conduit entity because these are all typically used for tax avoidance means, and they are very clear that the case for substance over form is what will be addressed to ensure we don't use treaty abusive mechanisms or treaty shopping scenarios. So if let's say we had to look at a scenario where a company A, which is located in a high tax jurisdiction, let's say US, and this makes a it has a company in, let's say, Marshall Islands, a company B, which in turn has received payments for services rendered by company A to a company in India. Now, in such a scenario, even though the service is rendered by an American company, the payment goes to a Marshall Islands entity, which in turn keeps a part, sends a part to the American company. Here, we will look at who the beneficial owner is. The beneficial owner is an American, and we will look at it as an India-American transaction. We will ignore the existence of company B. Very similar to what's happening with our GAR provisions, anti-avoidance rules, existence of impermissible structures will be eliminated. Now, right of taxation by country of source net basis. So, notwithstanding the earlier clause, the beneficial owner of the income from automated digital services referred to in that para may require the contracting state where the income from automated digital services arises to subject its qualified profits from automated digital services for the fiscal year concerned to taxation at the rate provided for in the domestic clause. And for this purpose, the qualified profit shall be 30% of the amount resulting from applying the beneficial owner's profitability ratio or the profitability ratio of the automated digital services segment if that's available on the gross annual revenue from automated digital service. And where the beneficial owner belongs to a multinational group, the profitability shall be applied to that part of the group or if available of the business segment which has income relating to this article. So what happens? So this is again very similar to what the CBDT circular also says. Now, let's look at a scenario where we have put the tax rate is mentioned. It cannot exceed say 10% or 15% of the remittance of the on the qualified profit. Now, let's say Google has ad revenues from India, and Google's overall margin is let's say 40%. Or now Google, so it has got a $50 billion revenue and 40% EBITDA, so it makes it $20 billion. But out of this 50 billion revenue, let's say 10 billion comes from India. So applying the same EBITDA uh, on how would I say, shall be 30% of the amount resulting from the beneficial owner's profitability ratio. So if I went up and say 10 billion comes from India and the EBITDA is 40%, which makes it $4 billion. Out of this $4 billion, 30% is what is a credit for India because India has given them market access. So overall, whatever is the profitability, you prorate it for business from this region. And on this business from region, you prorate it for the value the market supply provides, so which is 30%. That's what is being contemplated. So 1.2 billion will be treated as profits taxable in India out of 20 billion, and Google has to pay tax in India on that basis. That's what is being contemplated here. And qualified profit shall be deemed at 30% of the overall profitability of the beneficial owner or the profitability of its automated digital services segment if it is available. And where the group has multiple business, let's say Amazon has e-com, it has cloud, then we will go by segmental scenarios. That's what is being very clearly mentioned as far as this particular illustration is concerned. So moving on, friends, non-applicability of Article 12 to Article 12b. Okay, so if we were to look at scenarios when this will not apply, again, these are very similar to what you would have seen in your royalty or fees for technical services article, friends. Sorry. The above preceding para shall not apply if the beneficial owner of the income from rendering of automated digital services, being a resident of a contracting state, carries on a business through a permanent establishment, or where these are in the nature of business activities, then the provisions of or independent or dependent independent personal services, then the provisions of those articles shall apply and not the case for Article 12b. So let's assume Google has a subsidiary in India, and the subsidiary is the one who's rendering the service. Then the subsidiary becomes a permanent establishment, or it could become an independent entity on to which this income will can be apportioned to. In such cases, we don't need to worry about 12b and complicate life. It will directly go under Article 7 or 14. That's what is being mentioned. Very similar provisions to royalty and fees for technical services. So I wouldn't want to dwell deeper into that scenario. Or if Google has a branch in India, again similar scenarios will adopt. When does income from automated digital services arise in a contracting state? Now we've got section 5, scope of total income, which says when income accrues or arise in India. Something very similar to that we are trying to see for the purpose of ADS. Now, clauses 6 and 7. For the purpose of this article, income from automated digital services shall be deemed to arise in a contracting state if the payer is a resident of that state, or if the person paying the income, whether that person is a resident of a contracting state or not, has in a contracting state a PE or a fixed base, in connection with which the obligation to make the payment was incurred, and such payments are borne by a PE or a fixed base. So, if the payment is borne within the jurisdiction of source, you don't need to worry about it being an international transaction. It is automatically taken care within that home jurisdiction. So, if the payer is a resident of that state, or if the person paying, or if the person paying the income, whether that person is a resident or not, has a PE or a fixed base in connection with which the obligation to make that payment was incurred, and such payments are borne by a permanent establishment. And if we were to look at, for the purpose of this article, clause 7, sorry, income from ADA shall be deemed not to arise in a contracting state if the payer is a resident of that state and carries on business in the other contracting state through a PE situated in that other state, or performs independent personal services or services through a fixed base situated in that other state, and such expenses are borne by the PE in that other state. So ADS, what we have seen, will arise when I am in country of source and I have another country of residence. The transaction happens between the two. But if I'm in country of residence and I have a PE in the country of source, then ADS will not apply. This particular clause will not apply, because if the expenses are borne by a PE in the country of source, it will not augur. It's ideally not an international transaction. It's a domestic transaction which will happen within that jurisdiction. So this particular article will not apply. That's what is being enunciated here. And where there's no economic link between the ADS and the PE, then the payments for automated services are considered to arise in the contracting state in which the payer is a resident. If the payer of fees for automated digital services is not a resident of the contracting state, then 12b does not apply to the income of the ADS unless they have a PE and there is clear economic linkage between the two. So, very similar to again what we would have. Let's look at this scenario, friends. You have a Japanese company which has a fixed base in UK, and this base can be deemed as a PE. And an independent third-party UK company provides a service to the Japanese company, which is a resident of Japan. And this PE in UK pays consideration for the cloud computing services provided in Japan. So in this case, this PE is deemed as a fixed base, uh, and it avails or absorbs the expenditure. Then, in such scenarios, the income earned by the UK company SSR from cloud computing is deemed to arise in UK. So, if the income is deemed to arise in UK and it is paid by a UK entity, you don't need to worry about the treaty itself. Domestic laws will hold good. We've taken a contrast scenario and explained here. I shall share the presentation where it's a lot more self-explanatory in this regard. ADS are services to a related party. Again, going by your regular transfer pricing provisions, where we would have seen an Article 8 associated enterprises 8 or 9. So whenever the payment is being made to a related party, the provisions of this article will apply only to the extent of arm's length value. Beyond that, it shall be treated as if a transfer pricing adjustment will happen. That's based on the domestic laws of each contracting state. So the excess part of income shall remain taxable according to the laws of each state, due regard being given to other provisions of this convention, which is very clearly done. So if a group company related party transaction is provided and it falls within the ambit of automated digital services, then the provisions of this article shall apply only to the extent of the arm's length value of the service. Anything in excess of that shall be uh, taxed as transfer pricing adjustments. Now, how is India managed digital services? We've had equalization levy, where very clearly we've had originally a 6%, then it became a flat 2% on e-com transactions, and it also talks about sale of goods or services within its ambit, which has been specifically excluded under 12B and 194O TDS on e-commerce. E-commerce operator who is a resident or a non-resident is liable to deduct tax at source at the rate of 1% of the gross, and 5% in case of non-availability of PAN. So obviously, we are pushing anyone who deals with an Indian customer to have a PAN number in India. So, consequent to the introduction of equalization levy, the scope has been expanded. Originally, it was only for the purpose of advertisement. Now, it's also included on sale of data collected from a person who resides in India, who uses an IP address in India, and sale of goods. So, technically, the scope of this particular levy is now expanded across business activities. And if you were to compare 12B and equalization levy, um, it is 2% equal on consideration received by a non-resident who owns, operates, or manages digital or electronic facility or a platform for online sale of goods or services. Whereas here, the commentary excludes sale of goods or services other than ADS, wherein the digital interface is provided or operated by the service provider or the seller of goods. Exemption thresholds, of course, you've got this 2 crores and 1 lakh exemption threshold. So instead, even in the instance of the taxpayer opting for taxation on net basis, the profitability ratio shall apply to his turnover from AD segment irrespective of threshold. So there's no exemption threshold here. And also, equalization levy is outside the ambit of tax treaties, and there is no question of getting a tax credit on equalization levy here. So, what is the difference between 12B and OECD's action plan 1? 12B is much broader and it does not propose any size, profitability, and local revenue threshold as is mentioned in OECD's article, OECD's approach. And 12B is more streamlined, it's simple, primarily because without those thresholds, the determination of taxable income is fairly straightforward. Otherwise, you need to see what is the threshold, under what circumstance falls within or outside. And OECD's unified approach under Pillar 1 involves certain complexities such as the formulaic approach for allocation of profits. 12B's gross withholding taxing rights would be a consensus based approach. And however, as discussed earlier, in order to avoid treaty abuse, application of allocation rules in identifying the beneficial owner would be required, because otherwise people could just work with shell companies or letterbox companies to work around. So if you were to look at the way forward, the digital industry is vulnerable to tax changes. And what UN has done by virtue of providing a scenario like this is the developed economies which import technology and which also are the larger markets for all these e-com companies, not only from an income standpoint but also from a valuation standpoint. I think UN has given a good pari passu right for developing economies for providing market access. I think this will go a long way in substantiating India's case for equalization levy and also the EU's case on Google tax. Let's wait and watch. Interesting times ahead. And thanks for joining with us. Thank you and have a great day.